Let's talk about something that's been keeping the fandom up at night. Episode 6 just completely flipped everything we thought we knew about Jax. And if you've seen the episode 7 preview, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We've all been watching Jax as the comic relief, the guy who stirs up drama for laughs.
She still thinks this is a dream. What exit? If there was a way to leave, I'm pretty sure we'd have all left by now.
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Come on, Sadie. You're coming with me.
But episode 6 pulled back the curtain, and what we found underneath, way darker than anyone expected. So the big question hanging over episode 7 is Jax actually about to abstract? Or is this going somewhere even more twisted? Let's break down what's really happening with this character, because I promise you there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. First things first, we need to talk about that brutal moment between Jax and Pomni. Look, we all know Jax can be harsh, but that interaction crossed a line, and here's what most people are missing. Jax knows it. Watch his body language after that confrontation. He can't even look at Pomni. He physically distances himself from the group. This isn't typical Jax behavior. This is someone who genuinely feels ashamed of what they've done. And instead of apologizing or trying to fix it like a normal person would, what does he do? He isolates himself even further. That's the pattern we need to pay attention to, because this isn't just about being a jerk. This is self-sabotage. Jax is actively pushing people away. And once you understand why, everything else starts making sense. Remember when Goosework said we'd never guess which character was closest to abstraction? After episode 5, everyone was convinced it was Ragatha. The signs were there, right? She's always trying to hold everything together, always taking the hits. But now, everything's pointing toward Jax. And honestly, looking back at the previous episodes with this new perspective, the warning signs were always there. We just weren't looking in the right places because Jax is really good at misdirection, both in-universe and as a character designed to fool the audience. So before we jump into predictions for episode 7, we need to understand what's actually driving Jax toward this breaking point, because it's not what you think. Here's where things get interesting. Go back and watch episode 5 again, specifically that scene where Jax actually opens up to Pomni. It's brief, barely noticeable if you're not paying attention, but watch what he does. He turns away. Mid-conversation, while he's being vulnerable, he physically turns his back to her. He cannot maintain eye contact while expressing anything genuine. At the time, most of us brushed past this moment because it's Jax. We weren't expecting depth from him. But now we know better. That was the first real crack in his armor. The first time we saw him try to connect with someone on a human level. And even then, even in that brief moment of honesty, he had to create distance to protect himself. That scene wasn't just character development, it was foreshadowing for everything that came after. Episode 6 gave us the full picture of how Jax sees himself in the digital circus, and it's honestly pretty tragic. He literally spelled it out for us. He's accepted his role as the villain, the guy who pushes boundaries and breaks the fourth wall because it's funny. But here's where it gets complicated. We've also seen Jax display genuine emotion at Kaufmo's funeral, showing what looked like actual concern for Gangle, having that sincere moment with Pomni in episode 5. These moments don't align with the persona he's presenting. So which version is real? I'd argue the aggressive, detached villain is the performance. It's a character he's playing to survive psychologically. Think about it. If you convince yourself that you're just playing a role, that you're supposed to be the antagonist, it creates emotional distance from the reality of your situation. The problem is, Jax has been playing this character for so long that the lines between the mask and the man are starting to blur. And when that happens in the digital circus, things tend to go very, very wrong. Now, we get to the core issue, and this is where everything clicks into place. Jax's biggest weakness isn't that he's a jerk or that he doesn't care about people. It's the exact opposite. He cares too much. Every time someone abstracts, it destroys him. That's why he can't handle mentions of Kaufmo. That's why he shut down when Ribbit came up in episode 5. Jax forms deep attachments to the people around him, and every loss chips away at his mental stability. Look at his relationships with the other circus members through this lens. Zubul, he keeps things surface level, maintains boundaries. Kinger, the guy's already mentally gone most of the time, so minimal emotional investment required. Ragatha, He deliberately doesn't take her seriously enough to form a real connection. But Pomni was different. They were actually bonding, forming a genuine partnership. They worked well together. And that's exactly when Jax hit the self-destruct button. Let's revisit that scene where everything went wrong.
We did it! We make such a good team!
Pomni literally says they make a good team, and Jax immediately shuts it down. He calls her delusional, claims he was only entertaining her because it was funny. But watch his face during this exchange. This isn't casual cruelty. This is deliberate sabotage. Jax recognized that he was starting to genuinely care about Pomni, that they were becoming close, and he panicked. In his mind, he's not being cruel. He's being pragmatic. Better to push her away now, while she can still walk away without too much damage, than to form a deeper bond and risk the devastation that comes when she eventually abstracts. The tragedy is that in trying to protect himself from future pain, Jax only accelerated his own psychological collapse. Which brings us to that scene from episode 6. That panic attack isn't random. It's the culmination of everything we've been talking about. Notice the timing. This happens after his confrontation with Pomni, when he's alone with his thoughts and can't maintain the performance anymore. This is what Jax looks like when the mask finally drops. This is the reality he's been hiding from everyone, including himself. And here's the critical detail. Jax is only this vulnerable when he allows himself to feel sad, when the emotions he's been suppressing finally break through the carefully constructed walls. That's why he clings so desperately to the funny one persona. It's literally the only thing keeping him functional. The moment he stops performing, the moment he allows himself to feel the weight of his situation, he starts to break down. And in the digital circus, that's when abstraction becomes a real possibility. So, million-dollar question, is Jax going to abstract in episode 7? Honestly, maybe, but I don't think that's the full story here. Gooseworks said that starting with episode 6, chaos would begin in the digital circus. If she just meant Jax abstracts and becomes a monster, that feels too straightforward for this show. I think chaos means something bigger, a fundamental shift in how the circus operates, and forcing everyone to confront the psychological horror they've been trying to ignore. And Jax is the catalyst for that shift. What he needs right now is intervention. Someone who understands trauma, who can recognize the warning signs and actually reach him before it's too late. And there's really only one character who fits that description. My prediction? Pomni and Ragatha are going to recognize how serious this is and turn to Kinger for help. Now, I know what you're thinking. Kinger, the guy who acts senile 99% of the time? But remember his conversation with Pomni about putting too much pressure on yourself, about beating yourself up when you feel like you've failed people? Kinger understands the psychological toll of the digital circus better than anyone. He's lost someone before. He knows exactly what it looks like when someone's about to break. If anyone can reach Jax, it's him. The question is, will Jax let him? Here's what I actually think episode 7 is going to deliver. And honestly, it might be worse than abstraction. Jax won't let anyone help him. He'll reject every attempt at connection, convinced that isolation is the only way to protect everyone, including himself. We won't see him transform into a monster, at least not physically. What we'll see is something potentially more disturbing. The slow death of everything that made Jax compelling as a character. The humor, the energy, the chaotic spark that made him a fan favorite, it'll all start fading as he retreats further into himself. Think about it. Abstraction is quick, it's dramatic, it's final. But watching a character slowly lose themselves, piece by piece, while fully aware of what's happening, that's psychological horror. And that's exactly the kind of storytelling this show excels at. Episode 7 might not give us the dramatic abstraction scene everyone's expecting. Instead, we might get something more insidious, the beginning of Jax's complete emotional shutdown. And in a show that's all about psychological deterioration, that could be far more impactful than any monster transformation. The real question isn't whether Jax will abstract, it's whether the other characters can reach him before he's too far gone. And based on what we know about Jax's mindset, about his refusal to let people in, about his conviction that isolation is the only answer, I'm not optimistic, but I'd love to hear your theories. Do you think Jax is going to abstract in episode 7, or is something else going on here? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's figure this out together before the episode drops.